Here is your full, long, emotional, cinematic YouTube-style story following all your instructions exactly: dramatic hook, long paragraphs, 15-minute pacing, emotional depth, 2 CTAs, and a final comment request. She let him sit at her table in a crowded cafe, not knowing he was a millionaire single dad disguised from the moment he stepped inside the crowded cafe. Drenched from the sudden rain and carrying nothing but a worn backpack, something about him made people turn away. Maybe it was the exhaustion in his eyes, maybe the unshaved tired look, or maybe the way he quietly searched for a place to sit without wanting to disturb anyone. But no one knew they were looking at a man who owned multiple companies, a man who had built an empire from nothing, a man who had lost far more than wealth could ever replace. And in that single moment, heartbroken, lonely, disguised as an ordinary struggling father, he was about to meet the one stranger who would change the course of his life. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected encounters, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Ethan Walsh had spent the last 3 years raising his little daughter, Lily, alone. After losing his wife in an accident that shattered every part of his world, he disappeared from the spotlight. He stopped attending board meetings, stopped appearing in media, and stepped away from the billionaire life people once envied. The world saw success, he felt nothing but an aching emptiness. He dropped the designer suits, the polished shoes, the guarded security teams. He wanted to feel normal, invisible, human again. So he grew a bit of a rugged beard, kept his clothes simple, and walked through the city without a trace of the man he once was. And today, after dropping Lily at school, he found himself in that cafe, searching for a moment of quiet where he could gather himself before another long day of navigating grief, responsibilities, and the pressure to keep his empire running from behind the scenes. Amelia Carter was the kind of woman people described as strong but tired, warm yet guarded. She had dreams big enough to outgrow her small apartment but a life heavy enough to constantly pull her back. She worked 2 jobs, studied at night, and carried a quiet kindness that she gave freely without expecting anything in return. That morning, her eyes were buried in messy notes for her upcoming exam as she sat alone at a corner table, surrounded by the noise of the cafe. She was used to being invisible, used to people overlooking her, used to giving her seat away and expecting nothing. But destiny decided today wasn't one of those days. When Ethan approached her table, hesitant and conscious of being a burden, Amelia looked up and saw something no one else bothered to notice: tiredness, yes, but also a deep sadness, a silent plea for space, for rest, for grace. She moved her laptop aside, offering a gentle smile that felt warmer than the entire cafe. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know what he carried. She just knew that kindness cost nothing. As Ethan sat down, the rain tapped softly against the window, blurring the world outside. He wrapped his hands around the warm cup of coffee he had managed to buy, feeling the heat seep into his chilled fingers. He was grateful, more grateful than he expected. And as Amelia continued working on her notes, he watched her quietly, wondering why such simple kindness felt so foreign to him now. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't curious about who he was. She simply let him exist beside her. The cafe was full of conversations, laughter, deadlines, and morning chaos, but around them, time seemed to move slower. Amelia could sense his heaviness without him saying a word. She felt it the way people who have endured their own struggles recognize the silent battles in others. Her own life had been anything but easy: years of unstable jobs, unpaid bills, and dreams constantly postponed. Yet she carried herself with grace, never letting the world see how close she sometimes felt to falling apart. Ethan hadn't spoken to a stranger in months, not like this, not without pretense or caution. But something about Amelia felt safe. He found himself telling her little things, about being tired, about trying to balance life, about missing someone he had lost. He never mentioned money, never mentioned his companies, never mentioned that he was the CEO of 8 different ventures. He didn't want admiration. He wanted peace. And she listened, not to reply, but to understand. Amelia shared her own struggles, her dreams of becoming a therapist, her financial battles, her fear of disappointing people, her exhaustion from working double shifts. Her honesty hit him harder than she realized. For the first time in years, Ethan felt grounded, human, connected. He saw in her a strength he wished he had. He saw sincerity, warmth, and a resilience that felt almost healing to be around. The more they talked, the more the cafe seemed to fade into the background. Ethan's heart, usually locked behind grief and guilt, softened. In Amelia's simple gestures, sharing her table, offering her last packet of sugar, giving him space without judgment, he found comfort he didn't know he needed. He wondered why someone like her was struggling alone. He wondered why kindness often came from those who had the least. Hours passed, and he didn't want to leave. But life rarely waits. He had to pick up Lily from school. Amelia noticed the shift in his expression when he checked the time and felt a quiet sadness, unsure why she suddenly cared so much about a stranger she had met only that morning. Ethan thanked her, genuinely, deeply. She brushed it off with a smile, unaware that her simple act of kindness had just mended pieces of a heart she didn't know was broken. But what Amelia didn't know was that life had already begun rearranging itself around this single encounter. For the next few weeks, Ethan returned to that cafe at the same time, hoping she would be there. And she was, every morning, surrounded by books and determination. Their conversations grew longer, deeper, more honest. She learned that he had a daughter he adored, though he never mentioned her mother. He learned about Amelia's sacrifices, her dreams, and her quiet fears. She still had no idea who he truly was. And he wanted to keep it that way, afraid that revealing his identity would change the way she looked at him. But fate doesn't stay hidden forever. One afternoon, Amelia was rushing through the city when she noticed a familiar little girl crying on the sidewalk. Lily, lost, trembling, holding her school bag tightly. Her nanny had been distracted, and Lily had wandered off. Amelia immediately knelt beside her, calming her, recognizing the name she had heard Ethan speak with such love. She took Lily's hand, reassuring her until Ethan finally arrived, breathless and terrified. The look in his eyes when he saw Amelia holding his daughter's hand was something she would never forget. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper, something vulnerable. Without thinking, he pulled both of them into an embrace. For the first time since his wife's passing, Ethan felt whole. Amelia didn't know the weight of what she had done. She didn't know she had saved the two people Ethan lived for. Days later, Amelia stumbled across a news article on her phone, about a billionaire CEO returning to public life after years of hiding. Her breath caught when she saw the picture. Ethan Walsh. The man she had let sit at her table. The man who had been quietly grieving beside her. The man who never told her he was one of the richest men in the city. At first, she felt hurt, wondering why he hid it, why he didn't trust her. But then she remembered his eyes, his exhaustion, the way he drank his coffee like it was the only warmth he had left. And she understood. The next time they met, Ethan finally told her everything, about his wife, his loneliness, his fear that people only stayed for what he had, not who he was. Amelia didn't say much. Instead, she placed her hand over his, grounding him with the same quiet kindness that first brought him to her table.